ignorance. You know, I mean, most
and it's not their fault. It's really not always their fault, you know. I think a lot of innocent people are being hurt who, you know, we all have a different brain intelligence. And some people, you know, you're either born with it or you're not, or you develop it or you don't. And I think some people are being taken advantage of. You know, yeah, some people out there are evil anyway and they're going with it and whatever, but I do think that there are people who are being taken advantage of who don't have the ability to fight back and don't realize it. And like I said, we all have a different brain intelligence, and that would affect it too, wouldn't it?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. You know, most of the people, you know, see, this is where the big influence of, you know, the whole, it's a very strategic propagation. You know, they've propagated a way to subdue the mind through supplying certain areas of society with certain types of mind-altering drugs as well as subduants. You combine all three together, and we have a sociological, we have an application of MK Ultra, MK Chaos, McNaomi, COINTELPRO, the whole 9 yards, you know. I mean, they're all, I mean, combining these things together, when a person is drunk and tipped of their flesh, they're a whole lot easier to convince, you know, and so would be, you know, that they're using the microwave auditory application as well as other attention-seeking pulse wave technologies on a crowd that is, you know, into a part of society that's into drugs or have been introduced into drugs. Certain people are picked out for failure, you know, to keep them in one particular financial spot so that they will lash out in one way, shape, or another. I mean, it's all about a sociological control, you know, and the paranormals of it, the application of the parapsychology, and where it comes in is to be able to understand the psychological state that these people try to put you in. And then they will throw out something that is paranormal, like, say, a ghost, you know, or a UFO. Most of the, and instantly our brains are going to think, you know, hey, this is real, you know. I mean, it's like the eight-sided, you know, paradimensional box that you're shown, you know. I mean, it's literally a holographic illusion. But when you approach the box, it's still four-sided. It's all about angles, aperture, macros of light, you know. I mean, it's literally all about a visual cortex stimulation. When you study the electronic harassment long enough, you'll find that it's all about neurology. Every bit of it's about subduing the human mind. Every bit of it.
Well, James, I'm curious. I agree with you. It is about subduing the human mind and making a subliminal slave out of you, or, you know, a devil worshiper, a follower of evil. But I want people to know who developed this technology, and obviously we know why, but who developed it? And it's for the purpose of a false rapture. That's what to get us to fall for a false rapture.
Yes, yeah, without a doubt. Well, I'll tell you what. Throughout history, King James, he was a very, very surveilled individual. He was horribly sexually immoral. He had a lot of social hang-ups. But he had a way of applying himself to his society. He had a very productive society. And there was not a lot of squabbles. The people didn't have a lot of scruples. The people were very compliant. They paid their taxes. They abided by the law, and they loved their ruler, okay? And King James was a very manipulative, very intelligent person, okay? Queen Elizabeth had noticed him back in the late 1500s as a very productive social leader. Now, upon noticing him, through surveillance as well as having other journalists around at the time, that's what they were called. They weren't called spies. They were called journalists. And having other journalists around at the time, they were able to actually take, you know, quick notes of him and his productiveness in his society. And once she had, you know, figured out things, you know, she had approached him and asked him why he was so productive. He said that his success he owed to God. And why he owed his success to God was a very compelling fact. He had literally taken the image of the Greek God, or actually the Hebrew God, Jehovah, as well as Jesus Christ, and instead of applying a lawful, mean, wicked hand to his people, beating them, forcing them to submit, he said, what better way than to use their God, to my advantage? And sure enough, he literally whittled the text, the true writings of the Bible, down to a very small, convenient handbook for himself and other areas of the world. Now it has become the largest selling book in the world of all time, King James Version of the Bible. And the reason why is because it is sociologically productive. King James was able to actually make a God-fearing, law-abiding, tax-paying, loving society over, he started out conquering with a warmongering hand, but either way, he inevitably ended up using a very powerful tool of the human mind and their creator, God. And the reason why that is exactly what he had told her, had explained to her as a key facet to his success, is that through God, he was able to invoke fear into these people, and they abided the law or they answered to God. They paid their taxes or they answered to God. They, had a loving, productive society, or inevitably, this is what happened if you didn't. This is the, true foundation for the modern secular Christianity, and the DOD sees the exact same thing. The largest societies in the world see the exact same thing, is the productiveness through the iron fist and the fear of God. When in the original text, there was, they have literally switched it around to be the fear of a satanic application and that of a loving hand of God. I can't understand why people have fallen prey to it, but it seems to be a very productive tool. And Project Bluebeam bases itself on that tool, is those three facets, is to make you abide by the law, to fear God, and to, pay your taxes. Literally.
But the wrong God, and not Jesus Christ. These people are devil worshippers, so they're trying to get us to move towards an antichrist movement versus what we know.
Yes, that's definitely correct. That's definitely correct. And that's why, the coming of Christ, was so important. Inevitably, it was our, final fate, actually man's final fate, in a lot of ways. The education that he had left behind, as well as, in our spirits, the invokance, is what allows, ones like ourselves and others to wake up and smell the coffee and see things for what they are. And that's why we will be drawn into a parallel of a paradox of what is relevant here. We will be persecuted, we will be put down, just like it was then, shall it be now. It's written of so. So, I don't stand in the parallel of questioning it. I just know that it's going to happen and prepare myself for it the best way that I can.
Well, I think we're doing a great job, by getting the word out and making people aware. If I see Christ in the clouds, and from what I've read in an article called Project Bluebeam by Black and White, I pulled it off the internet to prepare for today's interview, is that this rapture, this false holographic rapture, will happen simultaneously throughout the world. And Christ will appear in the clouds, and it will be in every dialect, in every language, in every background, and people, will believe it. And that's my concern. I don't want people to believe the false Christ, because I don't believe as a Christian that Christ would ever do anything to deceive us. He gives us a choice to come to him throughout our life and accept him. The Antichrist says, accept me now, take my mark, starve and die. So I don't believe Christ would ever do anything to hurt his children. Where this is unbelievable, because this said this will be projected around the world, and you told me the other day that this has already happened, I think, in Iran, and they didn't fall for it. Was that right?
Yes, and Iran had noticed what was going on. Of course, being a the oppositicity of Iraq. You know, they fought Iraq diligently for 20 years. So they have, you know, Russian surveillance equipment